Yo, what's going on everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Brickball YouTube channel, and today we are doing the Chicago Bears of the NFC North, doing their last 5 years worth of first round picks, and they've got some hits and misses. But before we get into the video, more misses than hits, but before we get into the video, of course, we have the message that comes from deep within, from the heart and even beyond.
Yeah, I'll make this one quick, guys. If you enjoy this video or any other videos in the Brickball archives, be sure to drop a subscribe. It will cheer us up. It will make our day. And yeah, you'll be locked and loaded for great NFL content.
We'll make sure of that. But we're not here to talk about subscriptions. We're here to talk about Chicago Bears. So let's get into it.
Okay, so before we get into this pick, they didn't have the last 2 years of picks because they obviously traded for Khalil Mack. It's a pretty tricky one to decide whether that was worth it, but that's a topic for another video. So, Roquan Smith, a very, very solid linebacker, a bit of a Swiss Army knife. He can do coverage, he can sack quarterbacks, he can do anything. And he is in a good system of linebackers and pass rush in that 3-4 defense, but overall, a very, very good player. And as you can see, he fills out the stat sheet. He's a sure tackler, he sacks, he intercepts. I don't know why his PFF rating's low, but that is another reason why we shouldn't take PFF that serious. But yeah, I'd say it's an A. It's a solid linebacker.
Yeah, I've actually got the reason as to why his PFF was low, because he got 84.2 in pass defense, and 37.5 in run defense, run stopping, whatever, despite leading the NFL in solo tackles in 2020. So that is why you should not take PFF as like a gospel thing to follow, because this is a linebacker that goes under the radar, definitely. He should have probably got a Pro Bowl appearance in 2020. He had that good of a season, I think. And he led the NFL in with sacks for linebackers in 2020 as well. So he really should have got that Pro Bowl appearance, and I feel bad for him that he didn't. But he's great in stopping the run game no matter what PFF says, and he's great in coverage too, and he's all round, he's a stud of a linebacker. Mitch Trubisky, this is going to probably pull a few heartstrings in terms of Bears fans, but
Buffalo quarterback.
Yeah, he's now probably the best backup in the league. And he could probably be a starter out of some really piss poor franchise if he tried. But
Get to the Texans,
yeah, he'll do a job, to be honest. But in his 4 seasons in Chicago, he spent 51 games. They had a record of 29-21. Doesn't really tell the full story. 64 TDs and 37 picks. He was a 2018 Pro Bowler somehow, some way. But despite all of that, there was so much left to be desired, I'm afraid. He was too many inconsistent stretches. There was a lack of memorable moments. Nothing really pops to mind.
His arm isn't that good.
Yeah, he isn't the best thrower. He didn't become a difference maker week in, week out, which is what you want from the second overall pick and the first quarterback taken. And I would also like to say I don't think it's entirely his fault, because Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy should share the blame for their inability to get a good quarterback in this franchise. They think that now they've got Dalton. I'd rather have Trubisky than Dalton, that's for sure. They've missed too many times on getting a quarterback. They've whiffed, and I would like to see him become a starter. Being seriously, I would actually like to see him become a starter outside of Chicago. But this season he's going to learn behind a very, very young quarterback. A brilliant quarterback at that in Josh Allen, but he didn't go well in Chicago. You can't deny that, but it's also not his fault completely.
Yeah, well, he couldn't make it work with a pretty poor receiving core apart from Robinson, but he did have that one good year in 2018 where people say he was carried by his defense, and he probably was. Well, he did have a couple good games at the back end of this season, running a few RPO plays. But yeah, overall, it's a pick that was going to haunt Chicago Bears for a good 20 years, probably, with Mahomes being right there. Well, not 20 years, like 10 years. But yeah, we'll give it a D. Trubisky seems like a nice guy.
He's very humble.
He's humble. It just hasn't worked out. It just hasn't. Okay, next up, Leonard Floyd. A tricky one, and definitely one that the Bears haven't handled correctly. The grade does not reflect the player here. He was someone who got into the scheme and has now done much better outside the scheme in LA. And really, there's no excuse for that when you have two outside linebackers. You could have Leonard Floyd on one side, Khalil Mack on the other. That would have been an absolutely amazing pass rush, but they managed to somehow fumble that away, and now he's left. LA picked him up on a 1-year deal, and now he's got 11 sacks in the season, and now he's getting paid like 4 years, 67 million or something.
I think 64 million.
64 million this off season. So it's a good player, it's a good pick, but then the handling of the player just gives it a C in my opinion.
Yeah, the only thing is that it's just another big name that Ryan Pace has failed to convert into a big-time player. So you have to start looking at the front office, you have to start looking at the head coach, you have to start looking at the GM, you have to look at how they're drafting people. These are very talented players, as LA has proven, but they're just not getting the best out of them. So it's kind of like a franchise issue at the moment, but they have had some hits, no doubt about that, but Leonard Floyd was not one of them, and it's a shame because he's doing very, very well for himself.
And he got his most sacks before this season, most sacks in his rookie year. Yeah. So that just shows it's not the player's fault. He had the abilities to scheme, not being able to utilise them properly, and now he's obviously doing well.
Yep.
And he's got the bag. He's got the bag.
Now we are probably moving on to one of the most unfortunate players in NFL history, at least. So he's in I don't know how many years, was it year 4? And that wasn't with Chicago, was it? It was with someone else, I believe.
I'm not sure. I think it was.
Oh, it might have been. I'm not sure, but I've got it down.
His 5th year.
Yeah, in the first 3 years he spent with Chicago, he had 3 major operations. In his rookie year, what did he have? He fractured his leg or his ankle, and he had
like one leg injured and then another leg like tibula or something.
Yeah, and then the second season of severe ankle sprain, which ruled him out for a heavy chunk of it, and in his 3rd season he had a scapular fracture. That is 3 very serious injuries, 3 long years of rehab for 3 different injuries. Obviously,
you're never going to be the same.
And it's an interest. Obviously, in his career, for Chicago, he had 14 games, no TDs, 282 total yards, only 25 receptions in his career so far, and he was drafted in 2015. And of the 500's top 10 picks between 1970 and 2019, only 7 people have played fewer games than White's 14, and 4 of those players were drafted in 2019. That tells you how very little he has played, and I do feel completely sorry for him because he's been heavily injured since he entered the league. But you can't sit there and say he probably could have done stuff differently, but he is a bust, I'm afraid. There's no beating around the bush. He is a bust, and F he's deserved. He probably could have got a U, to be honest, because he just hasn't played at all.
Yeah, I wanted to give him an F because it's just unfortunate, you know. He didn't sign his career off by himself. It was just injury, and you're never going to be the same after all of them injuries. And it's a hard one. It's an F.
It's just unfortunate.
We're sorry. Alright, now we've got Kyle Fuller. Someone who has been a very good player for the last few years now, 2-time Pro Bowler, and really solid for the Bears. It is a big loss for them this season, probably.
They had to do it.
Yeah, they had to do it. Now he's on the Broncos. He'll make the Broncos a lot better, but a very solid corner and a good pick, and one that they actually handled pretty well because they got a lot of good years out of him. And a do-it-all kind of guy. And PFF don't seem to rate him, but we rate him.
Yeah, he's very
we
good.
all know he's a solid corner.
He's
not the most flashy corner, but he does all the good stuff.
He was one of the best corners in the free agency this off-season, no doubt about it. But they had to release him for cost-cutting purposes because the cap was so low this season due to COVID. He played every single game in the 6 seasons he was at Chicago. He didn't miss one through injury, so he's incredibly reliable, incredibly consistent. Got 19 picks, 82 pass defending in that time, so his stats say a lot about it as well. But they released him without a backup plan. I know it was kind of forced upon them with the cap issue, but you kind of need to have a backup plan if you're replacing someone that good in the secondary, and unless they're doing it in the draft, which I don't think they are. It's going to be interesting to see what their backfield looks like. But yeah, it's going to be a big hole to fill in that defence, and good luck to the Bears, but unfortunately I think your team can look a lot worse this season than it was last season. It's not just through him, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid.
Cool. That is the video
That's
all
that.
over, guys. That is the last 5 years of first round picks. Hard to judge it. I think it just shows they haven't utilised their players well at all. Some of the players are decent quality, but it's just a bit incompetent. Really.
I think the GM and the higher office and the head coach deserve a lot of blame for this. I don't think they get as much. I know they're on the hot seat. I know Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are on the hot seat, as it were, as what Colin Coward always says about this season. But I think they really, really are. Like, they really need to. And they haven't done anything so far. With Andy Dalton being brought in, like you were going out linking to Russell Wilson, you go from that to that. Like, it's poor. They deserve a lot of the blame, but I'm afraid that's the way the franchise is run.
Yeah, Bears fans, I think the suffering's gonna carry on.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the video for today, guys. Catch you guys next time.